In this interview, I meet up with Thinus Britz, who is a mind-body transformation coach who empowers people to regain their health, fitness, strength, confidence, and energy through a holistic mind-body transformation program. Let's welcome Thinus. Thank you so much for coming in today and doing this interview with me. It's a pleasure having you.
It's a huge pleasure. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So you are a virtual mind-body transformation coach. And what's the connection between our body and mind when it comes to food and fitness?
So that's a great question because it's going to start us off and set us up the scene nicely for the rest of our session. So before we talk about how it relates specifically to nutrition and fitness, let me first talk about the mind-body connection as a whole. So our bodies are governed by three main systems. We have 12 systems in our body, but three main systems that's relevant to the mind-body connection is your musculoskeletal system, which is the skeleton and muscles. This is basically the body in this case. Then we have the limbic system, which is your brain and nerves, and your mind in this case. And then we also have the endocrine system, which is your gut, the viscera, and your hormones. So everything is interconnected. So when there's a stressor in the one system, it also affects all the others. So let me give you an example. If we take our current situation where we're dealing with a pandemic that's forced most of us into lockdown, we're faced with a lot of uncertainties about our future, and the world as we know it has changed forever. So we've got kids that need homeschooling, and this causes us to be anxious about our future, and we are more stressed as a result. So when we're stressed, the stress hormone cortisol is released, and in more familiar terms, this is what we talk about, the flight or fight response. Mm-hmm. So now we have two of our body systems that is working overtime, which is the brain and the hormonal system. So for example, if we decide in this state to partake in a strenuous physical exercise routine, it will affect our physical capability or performance. So physically, our bodies will be weaker as a result because two of our other body systems are overloaded. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're physically weaker. It just means that our body is using a lot of energy on some of our other systems. Mm-hmm. So this means that our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, our attitudes can positively or negatively affect our biological function. So in other words, our minds can affect how well our body perform and how healthy our bodies are. And on the other hand, what we do with our physical body is what we eat, how much we exercise, how well we rest and hydrate can also impact our mental state, again, positively or negatively. So there's a complex interrelationship between body and mind. So the takeaway here is that nothing works in isolation. Everything is connected, and whatever happens in the mind affects the body and vice versa. Mm-hmm. Specifically, how this relates to nutrition and exercise, it's important to note that in this case, the mind is not synonymous with the brain. Instead, in this definition, the mind consists of our mental states, such as our thoughts, our emotions, our beliefs, our attitudes, and how we see the world. And the brain is just the hardware that allows us to experience these mental states. So mental states can either be conscious or subconscious. And this is where it becomes relevant for parents to be aware when it comes to food and exercise. Mm-hmm. So on a daily basis, what happens is we take information in all the time through our five senses. Our five senses is like our sight, our hearing, smelling, taste, touch, and we store this information in our subconscious mind, and it becomes who we are. It becomes what we do, how we live things, how we see things, and in this particular example, how we perceive and see nutrition and exercise. And that's where it becomes very important for parents to be very mindful about how they actually talk about food and exercise in general, because that's the behaviors that will drive the kids to have the same behaviors in terms of food and exercise. Mm-hmm. So if you have a negative relationship with food, for instance, it will be shown in your behavior, and the kids take this behavior in and it gets installed in their mind, and this is how they go forward, living their lives with the same negative limiting beliefs about food and exercise.
Wow. Yes. That's my next question is, how can parents set good examples for their kids about fitness and nutrition, right? Because they're watching parents a lot.
Yeah, yes. So, I mean, the parents are the primary role models. So kids rely on their parents to show them the way. So if the parents are inactive and they have bad eating habits, kids are shown that this is the way of life and this is the way how it should be. So firstly, they should lead by example. So they should ask themselves first, what is their relationship with food and exercise? Because that's what they portray onto their kids. So be very mindful about your words and how you speak about food and exercise. Avoid calling food bad or addictive, because kids should learn that all foods have a place in their diets. Even the sweets and the cookies and all those sugary stuff, it all has a place. So be mindful how you act and talk about exercise as well, because our words are extremely powerful and it shapes the future of our kids, like I've just explained. We take all this information in on a daily basis. And if we're not careful how we speak to our kids about exercise and nutrition in principle, they might be taking in the wrong information. So in terms of nutrition, to be a bit more specific, make kids part of the meal preparation and planning and show them what eating right looks like. So explain to them what's the purpose of each nutrient that is on their plate. So what gives them energy, what helps them with growth and repair, and encourage them to help the parents with meal planning. Talk about how different foods affect your bodies, and also talk about portion sizes. And very important to also praise children when you see them eating healthily, because they thrive on this intrinsic motivation. And maybe not hard to set good examples, but it's also very important to create a taste for healthy food in kids from a young age, because we all create certain taste preferences. We all like certain things, but it's just a taste that we've developed over time. So that's why it's very important to let kids experience how healthy food tastes from a very young age, so that they can create those taste buds for those things. And when it comes to fitness, to set a good example is disguise exercise is something fun that they will enjoy. Also explore different ways of being active as a family and also individually with the kids. And important to understand that there's two components to fitness specifically. The one is what we call aerobic, the other one is what we call anaerobic. Aerobic is simply what we know as cardio, jogging, running, swimming, cycling. But anaerobic is also important. That's what we call resistance training or strength training. So that's where we, in simple terms, pick up heavy stuff and move stuff around. And those are two very important components, not only focus on the one. So bring both those components into the training, and that's how we can set examples for our kids.
Absolutely. So during this lockdown, a lot of us got used to some behaviors. We developed some bad habits, right? What can we do to correct these habits?
So maybe it first would be interesting to understand, actually, to explore how these habits happened in the first place. I always like to explain things about why they happen, because there's a very good reason why it happens. And it happened to all of us. It happened to me as well. So we have our daily routines in a certain way of how we do things. And that creates a certain comfort zone for us. So we get up in the morning, we get ready for work, we get the kids ready for school, and off we go. And in the evening we come back, and then we have our evening routines again before we go to bed. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. So we go about these daily activities and doing it, and that's our habits that we're used to. And all of a sudden, the whole world has been turned upside down. And that brings about a very big change. There's a lot of fear and uncertainty and a lot of stress. And our decisions are based on two primary drivers. Normally, when we make decisions, we either do them to move us away from pain or to move us closer to pleasure. So what happens is, in all this uncertainty and fear and stress, we want a little bit of relief. And that relief normally comes in the form of food, more specifically, comfort food. And that's what we do to just get us away from pain a little bit and get us a bit closer. But then, of course, we know that is not good for us. So how to correct this behavior, it's important to understand that for change to happen, your desire to change must be greater than your desire to stay the same. And not until that desire to change is greater than desire to stay the same will that change happen. So what one can do is just to start to become aware, firstly, of how we feel after we eat this comfort food. The comfort foods that we eat is a trigger to show us how it makes us feel. It can make us moody, it can make us sluggish, it can even make us feel depressed. So once we start picking up the triggers of eating that comfort food, we can start to realize that it's time to change it. And also acknowledge that, don't beat yourself up about it. There was a reason why it happened. It served you at the time. It helped us to feel a little bit better about ourselves during this time. So it's important not to beat us up about it. And you must also always realize that in every given situation, there's always a good and a bad that serves you. We might not realize it. We might think if we eat bad food or crap food, it's not good for you. So how can it be good for you? Yeah. But when you want to establish that reason, what you can do is take a piece of paper, divide it in half, and on the left-hand side, write down every single thing of how this comfort food has affected you negatively. And once done, on the right-hand side, write down an equal amount of positive things of how it has served you. And you will find that it has served you in some way. And once you've done that, you would be ready to move on. And then the next important step to do is to establish a really strong emotional why this is important for you to make this change. Because this is where a lot of us fail. We don't have a strong enough emotional why. We don't really have a compelling reason why we want to make this change. And like I said earlier on, if your desire to change is not greater than your desire to stay the same, it will not happen. So once you've established that emotional compelling reason why it's important to stop this behavior and to make the change, then the change will happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is a good idea that it's been coming up a lot, is making a list of, what's the good and what's the bad in what the behavior is, right? To change it, you need to see it in writing, so you can, see the pros and cons side by side, and then understand, so that'll change the behavior, right? Help you change the behavior.
Yes. What basically happens when you do that is you essentially collapse that behavior, because you've got an equal amount of how it's affected you negatively and how it's affected you positively. And once you have that on both sides, you basically collapse that behavior and you will be open and ready to move on.
Awesome. So what is the association between food and stress? I think you kind of told us already. Can you give us some tips on, how we can help this with our kids, right? They also have gone through the same emotions and, have developed some bad habits probably during the lockdown, right? So
Yes.
what are some tips you can give for parents to apply with their kids?
So the biggest thing that you can do is that everything needs to be planned. Meals needs to be planned in advance and eaten at regular intervals. So what happens is, what I haven't spoken about earlier about the food and stress, is that often when that happens, when we release that stress hormone, the cortisol, we run to carbs and sugary things because we're in fight and flight, and your body says, hey, I need some fuel to deal with this issue that I'm having right now. And that's normally what we'll do. And we normally would overeat. So that brings back to the point that meals needs to be planned in advance and eaten at regular intervals. If we don't plan what we eat on a daily basis, then anything that is available goes. And if we eat healthy meals that's not only healthy but also balanced, that we get all the nutrients in that we need to get in, then we will find that we deal with our stress much better, and that we don't crave that comfort food when stress occurs. It's very, very important that either the night before or the morning, that you plan your meals, that you have them ready, and that you actually have them with you, and that they'll also be eaten at a regular interval. Because this is also another problem that a lot of us do. We eat when we're hungry, and then it's already too late, because then your body is already saying, listen, I'm out of fuel, I need fuel instantly, give me something. And what happens again? You run to the comfort food or to the carbs to just quickly fill up your energy levels. So when you have those meals ready, they're ready to eat, all you have to do is to warm them up, and they're with you. So you take them with you to work, or you give them to the kids if they have to go to school. And at regular intervals, you need to eat it regardless if you're hungry or not, because then what you do is you're consistently fueling the body with the right type of fuel, and you won't feel that need to overeat when a stressful situation happens.
Absolutely. So the next part is that's food is good. What about for fitness? What are your recommendation or tips to get kids moving? A lot of our kids used to play sports or other stuff. It's all got canceled, right? It's kind of went into it's a shock, right? To the system.
Yeah,
Like we're not doing what we're normally would
yeah.
have been doing. So how do we now start back that up in the family? Parents, what can they do?
So it's a very difficult situation because it depends on what type of training you're used to. Do you have the equipment or don't you have the equipment? But the trick here is just, look, our bodies are made to move and work, as you know. So it's important to keep that momentum up. And if we don't move, we lose that physical strength and fitness levels. So make fitness then part of the child's play. Try to imitate whatever exercise they were doing beforehand. Try to imitate that in a play situation. Let them do some garden work. Let them pull out some weeds. Let them push some stuff around. Let them pick some stuff up. Let them do some house chores, just to get that physical activity going. And if they can go outside, they can maybe do a little bit more body training, using body as your weight, and make sure that you incorporate all the components, not just cardio, like I've said, but also mentioned a little bit of resistance and strength training by letting them squatting, sitting, lunging, using the body as a weight essentially, to get them going on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Good tips. So parents are, in the position to, as we talked about earlier, we're a role model. It's a lot of pressure, but it's still, we're the role model for our kids, right? So how do
Yes.
we foster all these healthy habits? Like you've given us some tips on that, but how do I make sure that, I'm continuously doing that? Because there's days I can't do it, or I'm feeling bad or whatever, right? Then I feel
Yeah.
guilty, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So we know that growing up in an environment where health and fitness is a way of life, the chances are that, the kids will incorporate it into their life as adults as well. So small, daily, consistent actions will equal lifelong habits. So when it comes to promoting positive habits is to aim for balance and openness around food and meal times, and include your children in the meal planning, the shopping and the preparation, and encourage them to have a healthy relationship with food. It's very important. Create a warm and open family environment at meal times. And coming to meal times, it's very important to not eat on the couch and watch TV. It's very important to have it around the table and create that healthy environment about food and nutrition so that they understand the importance of it and is not something that just needs to be gobbled up while doing some other activity. And also be careful not to label foods as bad or forbidden, because it only increases the child's desire for that food. Nothing is bad or forbidden. Everything in moderation is allowed and is good for you. As long as you have 90% healthy, balanced meals and eat them daily, the other 10% you can use for those cookies and sweets, and it will be perfectly fine. So parents also need to be aware of their own eating habits and their own way that how they perceive eating and nutrition. So parents who tightly control their own eating, the restrained eaters, they may not notice they exert such excessive control over their children's food habits, which can also lead to risk of overweight in children. So stay away from using food. Another important factor is also to stay away from using food as a reward. Food should never be given as a reward, because using food as a reward, such as giving a child a cookie for completing his or her homework, can lead to an unhealthy relationship with food, and that is what we want to prevent at all costs. And also, don't force feed. As children grow up, their appetite starts to fluctuate. So when they're full, don't push them to finish their plate, and also don't force them to stay at the dinner table until they finish their veggies. It might appear that we help our kids get the nutrition they need, but these behaviors can actually lead to kids disliking those foods and having a negative association with meal times. And the same goes for exercise. Foster a healthy relationship towards physical activity. Make sure your kids know that they're part of the team and that health and fitness are a family affair, and take turns and let your children also pick a family activity.
Awesome, awesome. So, you talked about a little bit in there about overeating, right? It's something that sometimes kids can start doing, especially when they're stuck at home, and the only thing you walk around is the kitchen cabinets. Go back and into the pantry. It's so accessible, right? Before it wasn't as much, right? If they're at school or something. So how can parents help them with this if this continues in the fall and kids are home doing their school at home? There's a chance that this will continue, the eating, right?
Yes.
So how
So
can we?
firstly, accessibility, I think, is always a problem. I don't know if it's realistic to make the availability of food not accessible to children, but it comes back to what I've earlier said, that overeating rarely occurs when we eat healthy, balanced meals at regular intervals,
Mm,
because we feel full all the time. So nutritious food is normally big in volume, and you will be surprised how much of that volume you can eat and not feel hungry at all. So if you combine that also with proper sleep and hydration, then your child shouldn't have a problem with overeating. The
mm,
overeating only happens is when we're not eating at regular intervals, and now all of a sudden we feel hungry, we run to the pantry, and what is the first thing that we grab? We grab the carbs, we grab the cookies, we grab all those refined sugars and processed foods, and that's when overeating happens.
mm,
And we also need to be very aware of our own behaviors, because our own behaviors create the behaviors of the kids at the end of the day.
yeah.
If you've taken care of the basics, if you've taken care of regular, balanced, nutritious meals that they eat on a regular basis, and they're still overeating, then the parent just needs to be mindful. Overeating is not the problem. There's something that's causing it. And
Mm,
that cause might be a stress factor or something traumatic that happened in the kid's life. And then you need to be aware of that so that you can treat the cause and not the symptom.
yes, exactly. Yes. Why does certain food intake affect the energy level and fog the mind of the learning? Because if the parents are thinking of, homeschooling or, blended learning, right, for the upcoming year, the food does affect your mind. As you
Yes,
said earlier, right? So there's the certain food kind of fog and reduces the energy, not give you more energy if you eat it. So
yes,
can we talk about that a little bit?
yes, sure. So firstly, as you know, we are what we eat. So if we eat crap, we feel like crap.
Yes.
It's as simple as that. So if you think about it, your brain's always on. It takes care of our thoughts, takes care of our movements, our breathing, our heartbeat, our senses. It works 24/7, and even while we're asleep. So this means that our brain requires a constant supply of fuel. Brings me back to what I've said earlier, that we need to have regular meals regardless if we're hungry or not. And that fuel comes from the food that we eat, and what's in that fuel makes all the difference. So put simply, what you eat directly affects the structure and function of your brain and ultimately your moods. It's like an expensive car. Your brain functions best when it gets only premium fuel.
Mm,
So the culprit in all likelihood is when we get brain fog, is usually those highly processed carbs that we eat. Because what happens is it causes a rapid spike in your blood sugar levels. And when that happens, the body needs to release insulin to take care of that excess energy. And normally what happens is it's getting stored as fat for later energy. And then what happens is the blood sugar drops again. And that's
mm,
sort of when that brain fog kicks in. So it comes back again to eating healthy, balanced, nutritious meals, but at regular intervals and not when you're hungry.
mhm. So when we're working with our kids at home, making sure that they're regularly fed with good quality food, not, and then maybe taking the access away for the pantry where these, if you do have them in the house, right? And setting some schedule around it, probably, right? When
Yes,
they're able to eat, because
yes,
one of the things parents will notice is if that fog or the energy level spikes up and down, is the kids are not able to sit and do their work because they're going to be one sometimes jumpy and then the other time so slow, right? It's
yes.
just like on and off, right? Yeah.
Yes. So once you have that balanced nutrition and you give it to the kid at regular intervals, regardless if they're hungry or not at the time, you will instantly see a massive, massive difference. In fact, within the first day or two, you will firstly find the kid is less stressed, is more focused, and they are less prone to run to those snacks that's in the pantry because they're full. You know, when we're full, we don't really feel like eating those cookies and sugary stuff and that. But again, don't deprive them of it. Don't say that it's forbidden or that it's not allowed, or that you can't have it during learning time. If you've scheduled it into your meal plan, and this is why the planning is so important, if you have 90% of your food healthy, balanced, nutritious, and 10% is that snack, is that cookie or that biscuit or that chocolate, that's fine. And if you really want to make sure that they don't really get those highs and lows and brain fog, then schedule those snack times for those sugary stuff around their physical activity. Once they've run around outside and they've done some physical activity or whatever, there will be a depletion in energy. And if you give them that sugary snack or soda to drink, at that point in time, the body will just soak it up quickly as energy, and it won't spike the blood sugar necessarily.
Awesome. Thank you. And as a mind-body transformation coach, what advice do you have for parents moving forward?
So health and fitness is not something that just happens. It comes from a conscious decision and small, consistent daily efforts. It's a way of life for life. So there's no beginning or end. So the first thing would be is to start to educate from a young age and to lead by example, to be a role model. But just not educate yourself so that you can be a role model, but also so that you can be a teacher. So it's important that you as a parent understand nutrition yourself, understand fitness and how it works, so that you can become that teacher for the child and instill it from a young age, and that you also can become the role model. And don't try and reinvent the wheel. Don't try and figure all this stuff out yourself. There's amazing coaching programs out there that can teach you all these skill sets in a very simple and easy way for you to understand. And once you understand how it works, put you in that empowerment position to be able to give that healthy, fit life for you and your family. And if it's important enough for you as well, establish your emotional reason why you want your family to be healthy and fit and the best they can be. And once you've done that, the buy-in from the rest of the family will be very quick and easy.
So as a coach, right now where we are at, the whole world, right? It's a place where a lot of uncertainty, right? So sometimes fitting in a fitness is the last thing we think about. Some of us, right? Maybe, right? There are people like that, right? So what is it like? How can I move past that? It's in my mind, obviously, right? I'm feeling it, and I mean, I know it's good to exercise. I know all of these things, but still, I feel like, okay, I'm frustrated. I'm feeling depressed, or all of these feelings are happening in us right now, right?
Yes.
Overwhelmingly. So what do you advise?
So it goes back to what I said earlier on. If your desire to change is not greater than your desire to stay the same, nothing will change. So that would need to happen. Currently, however frustrated you are about the situation and the fact that you know that you should start training, that it's going to make you feel better, you're not. It simply means that your desire to change is not big enough yet. You don't have that compelling emotional reason why. And a good way to establish that is just, again, to take a piece of paper, sit down and really think about why this change would be important for you. Make it a very emotional, compelling reason, and make that reason strong enough so that that is what your driver is every single day, that will move you forward in order to start living healthier. And again, also don't beat yourself up. If it's not possible for you right now, let's say, for example, it's really not possible to do a lot of exercise right now, then what you need to do is simply, for now, reduce your calorie intake, reduce your energy intake. In other words, reduce your food intake, because essentially you're burning less calories, so that you don't become overweight in the process as well. So do what you can with what you have, but it's very, very important. This is really 90% of the battle won. You must have a really strong emotional reason why. And when you go sit and write that down, you might find that it's just not that important for you right now. And that is also okay. And then just do the best you can with what you have.
Yeah, time, right? Time will get yourself moving, but sometimes you just have to be compassionate to yourself to allow that time.
Always be compassionate. Never beat yourself up for your bad behaviors that's created the fact that you're not training, the fact that you may be eating wrong food. Acknowledge that there's a reason why that happens. But if you really want to make a change and move forward, you really do need to sit down and figure out what would that compelling reason be for you to change.
Mm-hmm.
And once you have that, the change will happen. Then the excuses will disappear, because then your current state is not acceptable to you anymore. The new one is where you want to go, and your reason why you want to be there is compelling enough. And maybe a compelling reason as a parent could be is that you do need to start to set that example for your kids, that you want to be that role model. And that might be a very strong emotional why you want to do it. And if that's very strong, that you want to set the right example for your kids, then nothing's going to stop you to achieve that at the end of the day.
Yes, beautifully said. Thank you so much for coming in today.
It's a huge pleasure.
Thank you.